The sun was sinking behind the hills of Israel, painting the sky in deep shades of gold and crimson. In the courtyard of her father's magnificent mansion sat Christiana, a young woman whose beauty hid a heart filled with pride and mischief. Before her stood her two closest friends, Elizabeth and Anna. A strange smile rested on Christiana's lips as she lowered her voice.
Very soon I will leave this land.
Very soon I will leave this land, she said. Elizabeth frowned. Leave? Where are you going? Christiana leaned closer and whispered, Saudi Arabia. Anna's eyes widened. Saudi Arabia? What business do you have there? Christiana laughed softly, the kind of laugh that made both women uncomfortable.
I have a plan. A plan that will make me richer than I have ever dreamed.
I have a plan, she said. A plan that will make me richer than I have ever dreamed. Elizabeth exchanged a worried glance with Anna. What kind of plan? Elizabeth asked. Christiana looked around to make sure no one was listening. I have learned that many people there are careful about what they eat. They trust what is sold to them. I will disguise myself, take another name, dress like them, live among them, and sell pig meat while calling it something else. The courtyard suddenly felt colder. Anna stepped backward. Christiana, that is wrong. Wrong? Christiana replied with a smirk. Wrong things often make the most money. Elizabeth shook her head. No, deceiving people brings trouble. Every lie has a day when it stands naked before the sun. But Christiana only laughed. You both worry too much. I have money, I have connections, I have a passport. Nobody will know who I am. Anna's voice trembled. You are playing with people's trust. And what if I am? Christiana replied. Trust is easy to buy when you know how to smile. The evening wind swept through the courtyard. Elizabeth moved closer and grabbed Christiana's hand. Listen to me. A person may hide from neighbors, from kings and from strangers, but nobody hides forever from the truth. For a brief moment, Christiana's smile faded. Then pride returned to her face. I have already made my decision. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. Please don't go. I feel something terrible will happen. Christiana stood and adjusted her expensive dress. When I return, I will return richer than all of you. She turned toward the mansion. Elizabeth called after her. And what if the price of that wealth is your soul? Christiana stopped for a second but did not look back. The world belongs to those who dare. Then she disappeared into the shadows of the house. Elizabeth and Anna remained standing in the fading light, watching the darkness swallow their friend. Neither of them knew exactly what would happen next, but deep inside their hearts, they felt that Christiana was not walking toward fortune. She was walking toward a storm. Before we continue with this powerful African folk tale, take a moment to support the channel. If you're enjoying this story, please like this video and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Your support helps us bring more inspiring and unforgettable stories to life. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to African-Folk-Tales-By-Nikky so you never miss another powerful tale filled with wisdom, suspense, and life-changing lessons. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country, state, or city in the comment section and join our growing family of folktale lovers. Now, let's continue the story and discover what fate has in store for Christiana. The night after her conversation with Elizabeth and Anna, Christana could not sleep. While the rest of the mansion lay silent beneath the moonlight, she sat alone beside her bedroom window, staring into the darkness. The warnings of her friends echoed in her ears, but instead of fear, they filled her with irritation. "Poor people always speak about honesty," she muttered to herself. "The rich speak about opportunity." She opened a wooden chest beside her bed and smiled at the bundles of money hidden inside. Her father had spent years building a successful trading empire, and after his death, much of that wealth had passed into her hands. The money was enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Yet, Christana wanted more. Much more. Her greed had become like a hungry lion living inside her heart. No matter how much she possessed, it always demanded more. The following morning, she began preparing for her journey. She sold some of her jewelry, exchanged large amounts of currency, and contacted merchants who could secretly supply her with pig meat. Everything was done quietly. Nobody in the town knew what she was planning. Whenever neighbors asked why she was making travel arrangements, she simply smiled. "I am going on business," she would say. Within weeks, her preparations were complete. On the day of departure, Elizabeth and Anna came to see her one last time. The marketplace was crowded with traders, travelers, and families saying their farewells. Elizabeth looked exhausted from worry. "Christana," she pleaded, "there is still time to change your mind." Anna nodded. "We have been praying for you every day." But Christana merely adjusted her expensive travel bag. "You are wasting your prayers." Elizabeth grabbed her arm. "No, we are trying to save our friend." For a moment, Christana looked at the two women who had stood beside her since childhood. Then she slowly pulled her arm away. "I don't need saving." The words struck them like stones. Before either woman could speak again, Christana climbed into the transport that would carry her towards the airport. As the vehicle disappeared into the distance, Anna began to cry. Elizabeth remained silent. Deep inside, she felt that something far bigger than ordinary trouble was waiting ahead. Days later, Christana arrived in Saudi Arabia. The country was unlike anything she had imagined. Towering buildings stretched towards the sky. Busy markets filled the streets. The call to prayer echoed across the city 5 times a day. People from many nations moved through the marketplaces, buying and selling goods. At first, Christana kept to herself. She rented a small house in a crowded neighborhood and began putting her plan into action. The first thing she did was change her appearance. Her colorful dresses disappeared. Her gold jewelry vanished. Her expensive hairstyles were hidden beneath modest clothing. Soon, nobody recognized the wealthy merchant's daughter from Israel. She introduced herself using a new name. "Fatimah," she would say whenever someone asked. The lie rolled easily off her tongue. To make her disguise even stronger, she learned local customs. She greeted people exactly as they did. She memorized common religious phrases. She even visited mosques regularly so nobody would question her identity. The people welcomed her warmly. They believed she was one of them. Each act of kindness they showed her made her deception easier. And that deception made her heart grow colder. Months passed. Finally, the day arrived when she launched her business. Using secret suppliers, she began importing pig meat and processing it in hidden locations. Then she labeled it as lawful meat. Customers came from nearby neighborhoods. At first, sales were slow, but Christana was clever. She lowered prices. She offered discounts. She spoke politely to customers. Soon, word spread throughout the district. People praised her business. Families recommended her products to neighbors. Restaurants began placing larger orders. Money poured in. Every evening, she counted stacks of cash while smiling to herself. Her plan was working perfectly. Or so she believed. One evening, while counting her profits, she heard a soft knock at the door. An old man stood outside. His beard was white, his clothes were simple, but his eyes seemed strangely wise. "I would like to buy meat," the old man said. Christana welcomed him inside. As she prepared the order, the old man studied her face. Then he spoke quietly. "You are far from your homeland." The words startled her. She quickly recovered. "I don't know what you mean." The old man smiled gently. Every traveler leaves footprints behind even when they change their name. A chill ran through Christana's body. For the first time since arriving in Saudi Arabia, she felt uncomfortable. The old man continued. "Be careful, daughter." "What should I be careful about?" she asked. "The truth." Christana forced a laugh. "I have done nothing wrong." The old man looked directly into her eyes. "The truth does not hurry. It walks slowly, but eventually it arrives." Without another word, he paid for the meat and left. Christana stood frozen in the doorway as he disappeared into the crowd. That night, she could not sleep. The old man's words kept returning to her mind. The truth does not hurry, it walks slowly, but eventually it arrives. For the first time since beginning her scheme, fear entered her heart. Only a tiny amount, but it was there. And somewhere beyond the city lights, hidden in the shadows of destiny, the first steps of that truth had already begun their journey towards her. The weeks following the old man's visit should have been the happiest period of Christiana's life. Her business was flourishing. Money flowed into her accounts faster than she could count it. Customers lined up outside her shop from morning until evening. Restaurant owners competed for her products. People praised her honesty, her kindness, and her affordable prices. Every compliment made her smile. Every coin strengthened her confidence. Soon, she moved from her small rented house into a much larger home. She purchased expensive furniture. She wore costly perfumes. She hired workers to help manage the growing business. To everyone around her, Fatimah had become a successful and respected merchant. Yet, despite all her success, Christana was not at peace. The old man's warning continued to haunt her. Sometimes she would wake suddenly in the middle of the night, hearing his voice in her mind. The truth does not hurry. It walks slowly, but eventually it arrives. Whenever those words appeared, she would shake her head and force herself to think about money. "Nothing is going to happen," she would whisper. "I am too careful." But deep inside, a small seed of fear had begun to grow. One morning, an unusual customer entered her shop. He was a young merchant from another district. As he examined the meat, his face became thoughtful. "Where do you get your livestock?" he asked. Christiana smiled politely. "From trusted suppliers." The man nodded. "And which farms?" The question struck her unexpectedly. She quickly gave a vague answer. The merchant looked unconvinced. Still, he purchased some meat and left. For the rest of the day, Christiana felt uneasy. It was the first time someone had asked detailed questions. Days later, another strange event occurred. One of her workers approached her looking worried. "Madam Fatimah," he said, "some customers have been asking why your meat tastes different from other sellers' products." Christiana's stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "I told them your suppliers use a special method." She forced a smile. "Good." But after the worker left, she sat alone in her office. The seed of fear grew larger. That same week, several dogs were seen gathering behind one of her hidden processing buildings. The sight attracted attention. Neighbors became curious. People began asking questions. Nothing serious, not yet, but whispers had started. Far away in Israel, Elizabeth and Anna continued their lives. Neither had heard from Christiana since her departure. One evening, as they sat beneath a large baobab tree near their village, Anna sighed. "I still think about her." Elizabeth looked towards the setting sun. "So do I. Do you think she is successful?" Elizabeth remained silent for a moment. Then she answered quietly, "Success built on lies is only temporary." Anna lowered her eyes. "I hope she realizes that before it is too late." Back in Saudi Arabia, Christiana continued expanding her business. Yet the more money she earned, the more problems appeared. One afternoon, a wealthy restaurant owner visited her personally. He was one of her biggest customers. "I have a question," he said. Christiana smiled politely. "Of course." The man placed a package of meat on her desk. "My chef says this product is unusual." Her heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" "He says it does not resemble the meat we normally buy." For several seconds, Christiana struggled to remain calm. Then she laughed. "Your chef must be mistaken." The restaurant owner studied her carefully. Perhaps he noticed her nervousness in her eyes. Perhaps he noticed her trembling hands. Whatever he saw, it left him suspicious. After he departed, Christiana felt sweat running down her neck. For the first time, she considered ending the operation. She already possessed more wealth than she could spend. Why continue taking risks? But greed spoke louder than wisdom. Just a little longer, she told herself. Just a few more months. That decision would change everything. A few days later, city authorities announced routine inspections of businesses throughout the district. Most merchants welcomed the inspections. They had nothing to hide. Christiana nearly collapsed when she heard the news. That evening, she rushed to her hidden processing buildings. She ordered workers to clean everything. Documents were destroyed. Records disappeared. Suspicious materials were removed. For 3 straight days, she barely slept. When the inspectors finally arrived, her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. The inspection seemed normal. Questions were asked. Papers were reviewed. Storage rooms were examined. Then the inspectors left. Christiana nearly cried with relief. She believed she had escaped, but she did not know that one inspector had quietly collected several product samples for laboratory testing. The investigation had not ended. It had only begun. Several weeks passed. Then, one evening, as Christiana sat counting profits, a familiar knock sounded at her door. Her body froze. She remembered that knock. Slowly, she opened the door. The old man stood there once again. The same white beard, the same calm eyes, the same peaceful expression. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, the old man smiled. "You look tired, daughter." Christiana forced herself to remain composed. "What do you want?" The old man stepped forward. "I came to ask a question." "What question?" He looked at her with deep sadness. "How much money is enough to sell your conscience?" The word struck her like lightning. Anger immediately filled her heart. "You know nothing about me." The old man nodded. "Perhaps. Then leave." Instead of leaving, he pointed towards the sky. "When dark clouds gather, wise people prepare for rain." Christiana clenched her fists. "I am not afraid." The old man sighed. "That is what makes your danger greater." For the first time, his eyes seemed filled with sorrow rather than warning. Then he turned and walked away. Christiana watched him disappear into the night. This time, she noticed something strange. Despite his age, he moved with remarkable strength. And somehow, within moments, he vanished into the crowded street, as if he had never been there at all. That night, a violent storm swept across the city. Thunder shook the sky. Lightning flashed above the rooftops. Rain hammered against windows. Unable to sleep, Christiana stood beside her bedroom window watching the storm. Each flash of lightning illuminated the streets below, and during one brilliant flash, she thought she saw the old man standing far away under the rain, staring directly towards her house. Then darkness returned. When the next flash came, he was gone. Christiana stepped back from the window. Fear now lived openly in her heart, because unknown to her, laboratory results from the government inspectors had already been completed. The truth she had spent months hiding was no longer hidden. And by sunrise, powerful people would begin asking questions she could no longer answer. Before the first rays of sunlight touched the city, government officials were already studying the laboratory reports. The results were undeniable. The meat being sold through Christiana's business was not what it had been labeled to be. What had begun as a simple inspection had uncovered a carefully hidden deception. Investigators immediately launched a full inquiry. Meanwhile, Christiana sat in her luxurious home, unaware that her world was about to collapse. She was enjoying breakfast when a loud knock echoed through the house. Then another, and another. The sound was so forceful that it startled everyone inside. One of her workers rushed to the door. Moments later, he returned with fear written all over his face. "Madam Fatimah," he whispered, "officials are here." The cup slipped from Christiana's hand and shattered on the floor. Her heart began pounding. For months, she had feared this moment. Now it had arrived. The officials entered calmly but firmly. They presented documents. They asked questions. They requested records. At first, Christiana tried to maintain her disguise. She smiled. She denied everything. She blamed suppliers. She blamed workers. She blamed misunderstandings. But the evidence was overwhelming. The laboratory reports spoke clearly. Witness statements supported the findings. Hidden records had been discovered. Former workers had begun talking. The walls of lies she had built over many months were collapsing one brick at a time. By sunset, her business had been shut down. Her products were seized. Her accounts were frozen. Her reputation vanished. The people who once praised her now looked at her with disappointment. The customers she had deceived felt betrayed. Many could not understand why someone would abuse their trust for money. For the first time in her life, Christiana realized something important. Money could buy comfort. Money could buy luxury. But money could not buy back trust once it was destroyed. Days later, news of the scandal spread far beyond the city. It eventually reached Israel. One afternoon, Elizabeth and Anna were walking through their village marketplace when they overheard travelers discussing the story. A foreign merchant had been exposed for deception in Saudi Arabia. The merchant's real identity was no longer a secret. The moment Elizabeth heard the name Christiana, her heart sank. Anna covered her mouth in shock. For several moments, neither woman spoke. Finally, Anna whispered, "It happened." Elizabeth nodded sadly. The truth arrived. Back in Saudi Arabia, Christiana sat alone in a small room. Most of her wealth was gone. Most of her friends had disappeared. Many of the people who once surrounded her now avoided her completely. Loneliness became her companion. Day after day, she replayed her choices in her mind. She remembered the warnings. She remembered Anna's tears. She remembered Elizabeth's words. She remembered the old man. Most of all, she remembered the moment she chose greed over honesty. One evening, while sitting alone beneath the fading light of sunset, she heard a familiar voice. "You seem different." Christiana turned. The old man stood nearby. The same white beard, the same gentle eyes. But this time, she did not feel anger. She felt shame. The old man slowly sat beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Christiana lowered her head. "You were right." The old man smiled softly. "I did not need to be right." She looked toward the ground. "I lost everything." The old man shook his head. "No?" She looked up in confusion. "What do you mean?" "You lost your wealth. You lost your reputation. But as long as your heart still beats, you have not lost everything." For the first time in many months, tears filled Christiana's eyes. Real tears. Not tears of fear, not tears of frustration, but tears of regret. She began to cry. The old man allowed her tears to fall without interruption. When she finally calmed down, he spoke again. "Do you know why truth always wins?" Christiana slowly shook her head. "Because truth does not fight for victory. It simply exists. No matter how many lies surround it, sooner or later, people see it." Those words settled deep inside her, deeper than any lesson she had ever learned. That night, Christiana made a decision. Instead of running away from her mistakes, she would face them. Instead of hiding behind excuses, she would accept responsibility. Instead of chasing wealth, she would seek forgiveness. The journey was not easy. Forgiveness never is. Many people remained angry. Many people remained hurt. Some never trusted her again. Yet, little by little, Christiana began helping others. She walked honestly. She admitted her wrongdoing. She spent years rebuilding her life through truth rather than deception. The process was slow, but unlike her old success, this new foundation was real. Several years later, she returned to Israel. Her wealth was greatly reduced. Her clothing was simple. Her appearance was humble. But something about her had changed. The pride that once ruled her heart was gone. When she finally saw Elizabeth and Anna again, emotion filled her eyes. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Christiana stepped forward. I should have listened, and I embraced her immediately. Elizabeth smiled. The important thing is that you finally did. The three friends stood together beneath a shade of a great tree, just as they had many years earlier. Only now, Christiana understood a lesson that money could never teach. A person's greatest treasure is not wealth, it is character. And character is built through truth. From that day forward, she spent her life teaching young people about honesty. Whenever someone asked why she spoke so passionately about truth, she would simply smile. Then she would tell them the story of a proud young woman who traveled far from home, searching for riches and nearly lost herself along the way. And so the elders say, a lie may run like a swift antelope across the plains, but truth walks like an old elephant. The antelope arrives first, but the elephant always arrives in the end. And when it does, everyone makes way. That is why wise people build their lives on honesty. For wealth gained through deception fades like morning mist, while truth remains standing long after the mist is gone. And that, children of Africa, is the end of the tale of Christiana and the harvest of deception.